Hello everyone. Today, as I indicated earlier, we would do an online lecture about SQL Server and the database. So we were discussing about the usage of the database within Visual Studio, and now we have the second part of our slides, actually, how to use SQL data sources. Now, the important thing here is that how you are going to manage a SQL database and how you are going to build one and how you are going to implement this into Visual Studio. Now, obviously, the data lists and query builders and so on, all these components are part of the Visual Studio, as you know, and it's quite convenient how to to use these with the toolbox and everything. As you know, this was our Halloween Superstore. Now we have this data source configuration wizard, as you know, in the previous versions of Visual Studio. Now I'm using 2013, so it's a bit different. Nevertheless, it is somewhat similar. So we need to produce some sort of connection string with the select command by setting it up, and we had some basic attributes of the SQL data sources like ID, run at, connection string, provider name, and select command, and so on. So, but I would like to actually discuss and show you how we can do this from scratch. So there are lots of options. Now we are going to discuss about these, although not all, because now you know how to just communicate through drop-down lists, text boxes and everything, and how you can put a data field within those drop-down lists and so on. We actually dealt this with the access. So now the problem is, however, SQL. Why SQL? Well, we are using Microsoft platform, right? So we have the Visual Studio. Now, obviously, if we are using this Microsoft platform, the best way to go would be SQL Server. So we need to acquire this SQL Server. So once I go to Google, actually, and what we are going to use is the SQL Express. It's enough for us. So once I say SQL Express, the first one, the Microsoft Com and Express Edition, well, the Express Edition is, the difference would be that it is easy to use, first of all, and you don't get to have all the optionalities of the functionality of the actual SQL server. So, which means actually sometimes it's important to have all those functionality within your actual server once you are actually working for a client with a large database and so on, for optimization most of the time and security. But with the Express Edition, actually, it is good for smaller databases, and therefore, I think this is useful for us. So we go ahead and download the SQL Server 2012 Express. Now, once you click on this, you will have lots of options. Now, the first one is the SQL Server Express with tools. So you have the local DB and SQL Server Management Studio. So you will need the Management Studio in any case. So let's go ahead and download this one. And next screen you will have these choices, 32-bit or 64. For my case it's 64 bits and the language English. So once we click on download, you will see it is something around 1 gigabyte. So it will take some time. So you can just wait until it's installed and then just continue the video from this point. Nevertheless, I will not show you the installation process actually. For the installation process, but I can give you some clues. It's basically the same thing. You should be saying next to everything. But you can put any name that you wish for your server. But probably it will get your PC name. Like for example, for my case, it's called Alihan PC. So just maintain the information over there and just remember whatever you are putting. For the password, do not go ahead and say SQL Server password, just say Windows authentication. There will be an option about this. just stick with the Windows authentication so that you will not be required to enter extra passwords for your databases. So it will be more convenient for us at this stage. Now, after you install actually the SQL Server Express Edition, now let's see, this is the Windows 8.1, so I need to stick this to my start menu. So let's say pin to start. Okay, now we have this SQL Server Management Studio. Now you will find this, and this is actually the place that you will be creating your databases in. So for example, let's check this out. And now we're waiting, the Management Studio is being open. Okay, now we are going to connect a server. The server for my case is, it's Alihan PC. As I said, now SQL Express is as we installed the Express edition, we have the SQL Express. Now, as I said, I didn't go and say SQL Server Authentication for my the password choice. So for the authentication, I already chose Windows Authentication, so this is fine for me. It will take care of it automatically. Then I say connect. So on the left, as you see, you have the Object Explorer. Well, basically this screen is somewhat you should be familiar with. The Solution Explorer and so on if you create projects. This is like your Visual Studio. But this time, the Management Studio is for your management purposes of your database. And therefore, you will be creating databases here. You will be dealing with certain functionalities within this one. So, one important thing, however, before you actually go ahead and start creating your database, I advise you to go to Tools. Then under Tools, you go to Options. So let's see, under Options, we can find the designers here. And the designers have a checkbox. Prevent saving changes that require table recreation. So you can, now this is for prevention. And sometimes, once you create a database or a table, the problem will be that it will be saved and you will be unable to add another field. And if this happens, you need to drop the table, recreate a new table. So I go ahead and I tick this one, so it will prevent saving changes that require table recreation. Okay, now I can actually, you have databases here, you will have system databases and so on. We will not be using these. So once you right click on databases, now as you see there is an option to create a new database. Now I'm saying this. Now now we should define a database name. So let's say Internet Programming Test. Okay, the database is called Internet Programming Test. The owner is set to default, so basically as I chose Windows Authentication, I am the owner of the database. So that's it. So Internet Programming Test. Let's say OK. Now as you see on the left hand side on the Object Explorer, now it showed up. So once you just open up the options, now we have the database diagrams. So no, I don't wish to create the diagrams yet. Now we have the tables, we have views, we have storage, service broker. Sometimes we have stored procedures. If you had your database course, stored procedures are actually quite useful once you wish to provide some web services for your clients so that they can use your stored procedures to run some functionality within your database. So these options that you have here, and it's quite nice. So once you right click on tables, you have the option to create a new table, and once you click on that you will see that it's quite convenient. So now you have the column name. Let's create some table for person, let's say, and I have person ID. Now the data type will be integer. For my case, I like integer for this case. Then allow nulls. No, we cannot allow nulls because this will be a primary key basically. So as you see, we can set the primary key once we right click on this column. So I am not allowing nulls here. And then this is actually an identity, so it is an ID, and therefore we should go and say identity specification, and it is an identity, so we say yes. So what will happen is that, as you see, identity increment 1, identity seed 1, so it will start creating the identities from 1 to something. So that's the idea. And I'm going ahead and writing person first name, which is, let's say, Anwar Car, so 50, and person last name we have, so again 50. Let's say person, what can we have here? Email, then we can say 50, then we can say person country. Okay, this is the nationality. Alright, then this is the same. Okay, none, I just allowed no nulls, so we should provide the full information once we are creating a row for this table. So okay, now I just click on save, so it asks me the table name. So as we said person all the time, we say person again. Okay, now this table is created, so I check the tables, it's not showing up, so let's refresh it. Yes, it's here, as you say. Now let's create another table. This time it is a country ID. I am doing the same trick, going ahead and saying integer and saying allow nulls no, then identity specification is an identity, yes, and everything is fine here. So country name I'm saying, and I can say NY character 50. Okay, I'm not accepting nulls again. This is fine. I think this is enough for country, right? We have the country ID, we have the country name, what we can have. If you want to show, for example, it will be interesting if you have the world map over there and you would like to, create an annotation like we have on Google Maps and so on, just drop a pin. It would be nice if you had the longitude and latitude information and everything. But for us right now this is enough, so we just enter a name for the table. It is country table. So okay, now it's set up. And let's refresh. So it is there. For the views are like, let's see, for example, do we have some example here? Let me see. No. Okay, let's go ahead and create some view then. New view. So you have two tables, right? So you can choose the country and the person, and all together, let's say. Let's add them both. Now they are here. So let's say the person name, person last name, we choose person email and person country. And we basically need to indicate the person country is actually equal to country ID. So I'm just, as you see, I'm just clicking on the country ID, drag drop to person country. So it created the relationship, as you see. So, and if you can see here, now we have the select command from and inner join, because now we created a connection, so we have the inner join here. So the code is created for you. Let's save this view and let's call it person country, for example. Okay, you can create views like these, and it's like a scheme for your database, and you can create separate. If you have, for example, 20 tables, you can create separate views like this, and you can define them like the person country or something, so you indicate the relationship in your view. So that's the idea of the views and so on. So actually, yeah, we set it up. So do we have the view? Let's see. Views, yeah, DBO person country. Okay, now everything is set up. So next step is we can go ahead and actually open our Visual Studio here, and let's create a new project, which is an ASP.NET empty web application. Let's call it DB test. Okay, now it's being generated. Okay, now we have nothing, right? So okay, now I go and say add new item. So I would add a web form which is called default. Okay, now it's here. Now this is the design. Alright. Now, what should we try? Let's try, actually, to set it up first, right? Of course. Now, there might be some issues, so let's see. We choose SQL data source this time, not Access or XML, but the SQL data source as we created a SQL database. So let's say configure data source. Now, there are no connections, so we need to create a new connection. The server name, let's search and see, it's loading, so it's checking if I have a server on my PC. Yes, it found my name, so this is the server name, and it's checking the database names under this server name. So if it loads this long, probably there will be an error. So let's see what happens. Okay. It says a network-related or instance-specific error occurred while establishing a connection to a SQL server. Find that the instance name is correct and the SQL server is configured to allow remote connections. Yeah, it is automatically. It should allow connections. Named pipes provider error 40. Could not open a connection. Okay. Now this error is basically about sometimes about the instance name, sometimes about the server name. So let's go back to our management studio. Now, as you see, yeah, it is correct. Now see, actually we installed the SQL Express, so it's not only Alihan PC for my case. I need to add this SQL Express here as well. So you can check the name of your server here. Also, you can see it directly here as the server name. And let's see. As you see, this is the user, Alihan PC Ismail, and this is me, and the server version 11. And we have the SQL Express here as the name. So let's try it that way. Let's put the SQL Express. Now let's go and check the database names. Yes, as you see now, it shows up the databases. These are system databases. So we have this internet programming test here as well. So we add it. Test connection succeeded. So once you click on test connection, sometimes it's needed because there might be other problems regarding the authentication and so on. So it's a good idea to test the connection first. Now it works. Okay, we got this connection string. Now let's say next. Yeah, you can save this connection string. Now okay, what we are going to display. Let's say country ID and country name. Let's display these. Next, test query. Yeah, we entered no information, so basically our table is empty now. So let's say finish. Okay, this is the select command. Now, the point was, once you go into source, you have lots of properties here, right? So you have the ID of the SQL data source, you have the connection string, and you also have the select command. Now the slides, when they are talking about these builders, the entire deal actually here is mostly about how to specify the certain things within your program. So if you go ahead and just say configure again, we chose country ID and country name, if you remember. Now you have an option to go ahead and say specify a custom SQL statement or stored procedure. Let's click on this and let's say next. So okay, this is the SQL statement. You can create statements for select, update, insert and delete commands, yeah? Moreover, you can go ahead and say call the query builder. This is a nice thing. Now the query builder, now see, you remember this screen from our SQL management studio. So you can actually call the tables here, and you can just create the connections or check the items and so on. So it builds the statement for you. So let's see. However, if you realized now the specified columns I said, now we have the country person and person country. See, you remember this one was the view actually that we created. So it's also included there. And if we say person country, and this is the select statement, if we delete this and the query builder, see, Now add table, country or person. The previous step, let's go ahead and say, we said specify a custom SQL statement or stored procedure, because I want to make this clear. Now, nothing should be selected here so that it doesn't create you default tables. So once everything is empty, you can just call query builder. Now it will ask you to add a table to this screen. So you can choose them, or you can go and say the views. So now let's say add and close. Now once we add the view, we can directly get the person country. So once you actually mix the tables, you can get that information directly as a mixed table or the view here. So that's a good option. And let's close it. Let's call it once again. So you can choose the country and person. With shift, I pressed on shift and I can choose both. So let's add them together and close. You can actually create your select statement or whatever with by choosing these again, as we did before. Now also person country. Now you can say, okay, these are equal. So again, it creates you the statement with the inner join and everything. Then you execute this query. Right now, as you see, we chose country ID, country name, and person country actually. It's not needed person country. So country ID and country name. But as you see, there is nothing, again, still no information. We don't need to create this because I would like to actually play with the country table and add some countries to it. So we choose everything and say next, select star from country, and we have no information within. Okay, that's nice. So we can add a grid view as we did before. Now data source will be SQL data source now that we defined. So the country IDs and country names will be shown here. And the auto format, let's say rainy day is a nice one. I like it. So let's say okay. Okay, now we have our grid view, but obviously we will have nothing. So we can actually create some some standard controls, right? So let's say please enter country name. Then let's provide the provided text box so that the users can enter something here. Okay. Now this is text box 1. Let's change it box country. Okay, let's say box country. Alright. Then let's provide a button so that once we click on the button, it gets executed. Alright. It's not important, the appearance is not important at this point, so let's say submit. Yeah. Alright. Now this is our website. So let's try to build this one. Okay, it succeeded. Now let's check it. Okay, please enter country name. So obviously once we click on submit, we should be able to do something, right? Okay, so as we do, we can go ahead and just click on create a new action for this submit. So I double click on submit and it will create, hopefully, not doing that for me. Alright, it is not creating anything for me, so that is fascinating. Now, yes, it is not so important after all. So we can, changes are not while the code is running. Yes, sorry, my bad, I did not stop debugging. Okay, let's stop debugging and let's double click now. Okay, now button one click. Alright, it's created for us. So we should do something here. Now actually we should show the users a message as well. So I forgot adding a label. Perhaps we can go ahead and add a label here, and which basically contains nothing at all. So the font, you know, the colors might be different, but let's not play with the colors at this point. So we can, however, say the visible, set visible to false so that it is not displayed directly. Okay, now If the visibility is false, then the website will not display anything as the label. So let's go to debug and stop debugging. Yes, I did it now. So, okay, what we can do here, first of all, let's make sure that when the page loads, we make that label 1 dot visible equals to false. We must make sure that it is not visible at first. This is important. Now, we should probably go ahead and get some value from this user, right? Now, for example, they will write Germany or Italy or something here. Now, we should put this into database. Okay, so how can we do this? Now, this is not a select command. This is an insert command. So, actually, probably we should get that value. So what I'm going to do is I will create a string called value, which I will get the content from our text box, which was called box country dot, let's say, text. I will get the text within this text box that we provided for the user, and I will store this value within a string called value. So this is what I'm going to do. Now, for your headers, once I actually start dealing with the databases, I always put all the SQL things here. So, for example, using SQL, well, system, of course, dot data dot. Now you have options, right? SQL, SQL client, and so on. Normally, I put SQL and SQL client because throughout the implementation, you might require the client-based code and the actually SQL-based code. So I always add these two headers and use these libraries when I'm dealing with these. So what we do now is we should probably create I should probably show you how we can create a connection string at this point. So we need to create a connection first. We need to connect to the database. So what I'm saying is SQL connection. Now let's put a name for this connection. Connect, let's say 1. Okay, or DB. Okay, SQL connection DB equals to new SQL connection. This is basically we are creating a new object now. And what is our connection string? Actually, we had it stored in webconfig, but I would like to go ahead and show you how we can use the connection string from our SQL data source that we created before. So you say SQL data source. You remember we created this one in the previous page. So it's actually this data source that we created. So 1 dot, now you have the properties of this data source, connection string. So it is done. Actually, we created the connection string. So see, when we go to the source, now we have this connection string, right? Internet programming test connection string, we said. So where is this coming from? Webconfig. Now you go to webconfig file. Now, as you see, there are connection strings stored here. So there is an internet programming test connection string, which actually, see, the connection string is this: data source, Alihan PC, SQL Express, initial catalog, internet programming test, and integrated security true. So basically, it's once I set my database up in Visual Studio, it created this connection string for me. So we are just getting this connection string through the data source that we created beforehand. So that was the idea. Now we have our connection string and we created a new connection called DB. So next step. Now we need to just use an SQL command, right? Still we don't have an insert command at this point. So I need to create a command. So we have something for that. SQL command. Yeah, so let's put the CMD. The name is CMD equals to new SQL command. Now, at first we don't want to probably put something into it. So let's just make it an empty command at this point. Now, the type, what sort of command that we are going to use. So let me show it to you. Now, once you say cmd dot, now you have the properties of the SQL command. So once we say command type, we have several options at this point. We have system data.command type dot. You can either get a table direct, so the name of a table. You can get a stored procedure here, the name of a stored procedure, or you can get a text, which is a SQL text command. So once you wish to implement a SQL command, you use the text option. So we are saying the command type is a text, and we just conclude this. Then the second step is to actually define this command. So let's say cmd.command. This time now we have command text. Okay, equals. Now we need to form something. So what we are going to say is that we need to get that value that we previously got here from the box country.text and put it inside the country name field, because we said the country ID is already an identity, right? So it will be automatically generated for us. It will start from 1, then it will become 2, 3, 4, and so on. It will be automatically generated, and they are auto-generated numbers basically. So for us, the only important thing is the country name field of the table. So we have the insert command, right? So we say insert. Now say our table was called country. Now you need to indicate the field in parentheses here. So it is called country name. Then you need to set the values. So what do we have as the values? Now we have this value, right? So how we are going to put that one? So we say values, and within the parentheses again you are going to declare, because there might be multiple, right? You might put country name something, so you separate them with commas and you just declare them within parentheses. So here for the values as well. Now we need to put something. So how do we do this? Now the format should be something like, for example, the values, and we will say okay, something like, normally if I was writing a normal SQL command, it should be something like this, for example. Let me show it to you. Okay, this is a proper, for example, SQL command. Now I am putting something within country names. Now the values will be Germany, and you need to put these single quotes here, and I'm closing the statement with the double quotes. So that's perhaps the problem. Now we need to put the value here. So what I do is that I just delete Germany and I close my string here actually. Now I say plus. Now what we are going to put value, because we got it as string, right? So we say value, then I say plus again, so that I can add the last part of the parentheses. Now I open my string once again. So okay, now see, this idea is basically we just put the first string here. This is our first part of the string, let's say. Now then we are putting value afterwards. Then we are closing the parentheses. With pluses we added the string. So as you know, this plus operation is called catenation in strings. So we just add 3 different strings together at this point. This first part, the value, and the last part. So this is our SQL command. Now what we need to do is that we need to bind this command to a connection. So how can we do this? We can say cmd dot connection equals to, we had the connection, right? db. We already defined it here, so it is now defined well. So we need to open, however, a connection. So we just defined the connection, but it's not open yet. As you would see, please read the slides as well. So as you saw, I think the last lecture we were talking about these. We said one of the common properties of the SQL connections is the open, so, and close. So you can open and close these connections with the code. And let's go ahead and open the connection. So what's our connection called? db. I say dot open. So now I opened the connection at this point. Now it's a good idea to use the try and catch block if you are just dealing with the databases, because there might be some certain exceptions, and you might wish to handle those. So I will not actually at this point handle all the exceptions, so I will just open a empty try and catch block here. Try catch. Okay. Now if you are familiar with Java, now also because with the C# it's the same, for my object-oriented programming class people over there, Hong Tran Bui, Jonathan, you know there is after try and catch we were talking about finally, right? So now we have finally. So this finally, we said it is good to avoid memory leakage. So now I will show you how to use these blocks. Now try. What are we going to try? Now the command we have, we need to execute this command, right? The insert country blah blah. So there is a thing for that, actually. Command dot execute. So non-query asynchronously, and so on. So what we do is execute non-query. What it does is executes a transact SQL statement against the connection and returns the number of rows affected. So basically, normally we use this execute non-query. So let's go ahead and use this one. And okay. Now, alright. Oh, there was a red spot over there. Okay. Now, if we succeed, I can, because you know the try block, if this line fails, then we will just go into the catch block, so the next line will not be executed. And therefore, if we skip this, if we succeed with this line, I can proudly put this label1.text as success writing into database. Okay, and as we just made the label's visibility false, now I can say, after putting this text within, label1 dot visible equals to true at this point. So okay, this is our try block. Now for the catch block, we are actually putting the label1 text and label1 visible. The text will be an error occurred writing into database. Okay, so this is our catch block. So through the label, actually, we can see the code works or not. And the nice thing with try and catch is that your website will not get crashed or something. You will not see a server message. You will see a cute label message which says an error occurred, so no one will be affected. And this finally, which is a nice way of ending your try and catch blocks, you actually prevent memory leakage. So what can cause a leakage here? We said db.open. Now still the connection is open. So once this process is done, we can say db.close at this point. So even though the catch is not executed, the finally will be executed. Even though try cannot be completed, the finally will be executed anyways. So that's the purpose of the finally. So you basically just clean the things up in the end. So okay, this is our code. Let's try to build this one. Let's see if it will be built. Yeah, it's successfully built. So let's try if it fails or not. Yes, okay, enter a country name. Of course I'm going to enter Turkey. Let's click on submit. Success writing into database. So that's good. That's good, which means actually our code worked. So let's refresh this default.aspx. See? The country ID, Turkey, now it's shown. So let's enter something else, USA, submit. Then let's write Germany, submit. Then let's refresh it once again. Now as you see, now we have the country IDs, country names, Turkey, USA, Germany. So we are actually writing into the database now. So we can stop debugging this and let's go to SQL data source and let's configure it again. and the country is chosen, let's check the statement here and let's test the query. As you see, the actual database is also affected. Now we have 3 countries within our database. Obviously, with this code, I didn't check any errors. For example, what if we have a field called Germany in the database? Will we be able to enter? Because if you realized, once I was defining our tables here, and the DBO country, for example, let's say design, and the SQL Management Studio, SQL Server Management Studio site, for the country name, probably this field is not unique and it can be replicated. Therefore, I didn't put anything regarding this, and probably you should prevent the user from entering the same country name once again. So you should write the code regarding this as well. But I think this clearly demonstrates some power actually of the Visual Studio and SQL Server Management Studio when you make them work together. So I hope that you can go ahead and try. For example, what would be a nice idea is that once you click on submit, actually the page will be refreshed. I didn't just do anything, any functionality here, as I was just trying to show you a database example. So you can go ahead and try. Now we did insert, right? Put another button over there. Now, for example, a good thing, I would like you to actually submit this. Now, you will be doing the same thing that I did here today. Now, what I want you to do as an extra is that I want you to put a drop-down menu or drop-down list at this point. Get the country names here and put a button called delete, and write your own, as I did for the button one click. This was just for inserting something. Write your own SQL statement for deleting that field and try it that way, and try to submit this to me under the assignment section on our internet programming part of the Blackboard. You will see that. So what we are going to do next is that we are going to deal with the master pages, and your web applications will have a better appearance probably. So then we will meet on Tuesday. Take care, guys.